day, things seem to be getting worse and worse between the WNBA and the Players Union. In what should have been a very exciting time as players, if they would have signed a new CBA, you'd have players jetting all over the place. You would have multiple expansion drafts and all this movement across the league. Fans would be getting excited about what their teams are going to look.
The room got tense before anyone explained why. Smiles froze, and suddenly one name felt heavier than the commissioner's title itself. Funny how a league built on collective strength now feels rattled by a single spotlight. Something shifted quietly, almost politely, and now the power dynamics look awkward. This isn't about talent alone, and it's definitely not about timing. It's about control, image, and what happens when the future shows up uninvited and refuses to wait its turn.
They say, folks, money talks, BS walks. And though the league and the players have not come to terms on a new collective bargaining agreement, the league and the owners are giving the general managers a clear message. Send out free agent offers anyway. Maybe if we dangle some dollars in front of these players' faces, they're more likely to say, I can go for a paycheck right now. Oh, I know we're all strong on this front, but I'm kind of hungry for a meal. I could use a couple.
The funny thing about power is that it usually pretends nothing is happening right up until the moment the room rearranges itself without asking permission. 1 minute, everything is under control. And the next minute, one player is selling out arenas, hijacking TV ratings, dragging merchandise numbers into the future, and accidentally exposing how fragile the entire structure really is.
Sage Steele just poured a dose of reality and cold water on these WNBA players about this whole pay thing, this lockout strike, whatever it is you want to call it. Sage Steele let it be known, hey, listen, man, y'all not all what y'all think y'all are, and y'all need to relax and take a chill pill. Let's get to what she said.
Because here's the uncomfortable truth nobody wants to say out loud with a straight face. The WNBA finally got the moment it spent decades begging for, and now it looks slightly terrified of what that moment actually demands in return.
All this momentum, we talked about this. The WNBA had all this momentum from Caitlin Clark, the growth of the league, new media rights deal. And even without a lockout and or strike as of yet, this is damaging the league. This is fans are exhausted with it. Fans are exhausted with the Players Union and how they're approaching this and how they're acting.
This was supposed to be the victory lap. The league had momentum, headlines, eyeballs, and relevance that could no longer be dismissed as niche or symbolic. Caitlin Clark didn't just bring attention, she brought receipts. Ticket sales jumped, broadcast interest exploded.
The WNBPA and the WNBA statement. The WNBA basically just said, we want to build upon the league. We want, we know we want a deal that gives the best players more money, enhances the player experience and supports the long-term growth. The WNBA players, and by the way, the players are in the right to argue for this. The WNBA are basically being like, well, what the players want isn't sustainable. I think if the players could guarantee the league will continue to...
Casual fans suddenly knew player names without needing a media guide. And somehow, despite all of that, the league still found a way to trip over its own shoelaces. That's where the tension starts to feel personal. Because when a league is still losing money, while one player is basically hauling it uphill like an Olympic sled, people start asking questions that make leadership very uncomfortable. Not dramatic questions, not angry questions, just quiet ones that land harder than shouting ever could. Questions like why things still feel stalled, why progress feels cosmetic, free agency freezes, expansion plans wobble, arenas start filling their calendars with other events because uncertainty does not pay rent. Nothing screams confidence like telling the world to wait, while momentum quietly leaks out the back door. Meanwhile, fans are watching this unfold with the expression of someone who finally got front row seats, only to discover the show might be canceled due to internal arguments over who controls the lights. They were promised movement, excitement, and growth. And instead, they got press releases, moratoriums, and the slow realization that the league's biggest obstacle might not be external disrespect, but internal confusion.
That's the plan. So, the WNBPA and the WNBA statement. The WNBA basically just said, we want to build upon the league. We want, we know we want a deal that gives the best players more money, enhances the player experience, and supports the long-term growth. The WNBA players, and by the way, the players are in the right to argue for this. The WNBA are basically being like, well, what the players want isn't sustainable. I think if the players could guarantee.
And right in the middle of it all is Caitlin Clark, doing the worst possible thing for a fragile power structure, making herself unavoidable. Everywhere she goes, the numbers follow. Jerseys fly off shelves, arenas sell out, television ratings spike like someone accidentally turned the volume knob too far. She isn't asking for control, she isn't campaigning for leadership, she isn't demanding anything at all. She just keeps showing up, playing basketball, and making it painfully obvious where the league's actual value currently lives. Which is exactly why the situation feels so awkward. Because when one player becomes the face, the engine, and the proof of concept all at once, it quietly exposes how little direction existed before she arrived. Even now, even with sold-out games, even with national attention, that disconnect is not subtle anymore. Fans can see it. Broadcasters can see it. Sponsors can definitely see it. And nothing highlights that contradiction faster than watching one player generate demand while the system around her struggles to capitalize on it.
I think the league would make the deal, but there's no guarantee of that because everybody in the league is smart enough to know we are one Caitlin Clark injury away from this league going back to pre-2024. Not 2023, but everything lower in 2024. Like, we all know this league is nowhere near as culturally relevant right now as it was in 2024. In the summer of 2025, did First Take talk about any women's basketball? They talked about any of these sports shows.
At some point, the math stops being ideological and starts being embarrassing. Because here's the irony: nobody can escape. Caitlin Clark is not just carrying the league's visibility, she's carrying its credibility. She's the proof that the product can sell when presented clearly, marketed boldly, and allowed to breathe. Which raises an inconvenient question for leadership. If this works so well, why did it take this long, and why does it still feel like nobody knows what to do with it? That's where fans start drifting from excitement into suspicion. They're not angry, they're confused. Confused about why growth is being treated like a threat instead of a gift. Confused about why negotiations feel more combative than constructive. The league office responds, deadlines pass, business freezes. Everyone insists they are protecting the future while actively postponing it. It becomes a staring contest where nobody wants to blink, even as the audience starts checking their phones. The commissioner, meanwhile, is stuck in an impossible position that somehow keeps getting worse.
We know that there was no deal that was agreed upon by the January 9th deadline. We know that the WNBA owners left the players' text messages on red. That's right. Left them on scene, no response, and the players had an emotional statement. They went and put a rat outside the NBA store in New York. They put out this emotional statement talking about the WNBA owners are intentionally trying to run out the clock, and this will not, stop it. Y'all are so busy trying to win over public perception. Y'all are forgetting that the most important thing is actually getting the damn.
On one side, there's tradition, structure, and the need to maintain authority. On the other side, there's reality, which does not care about titles, hierarchy, or carefully worded statements. Reality cares about who moves tickets, who drives engagement, and who keeps the lights on. Right now, reality has a very clear favorite, and that's where the whispers start. Not loud demands, not organized campaigns, just a growing murmur that sounds suspiciously like logic. If Caitlin Clark is already acting as the league's gravitational center, why not let her shape the future more directly? If she's the one fans trust, follow, and rally behind, why keep pretending she's just another piece instead of the cornerstone? The idea makes leadership nervous, which is usually how you know it has teeth. And that scares people who built the current system. There's also the inconvenient matter of optics. The commissioner can say all the right things, but optics do not negotiate. When fans see stalled growth, frozen movement, and public friction, they instinctively look for alternatives. They start imagining what the league could look like if the person driving its popularity had more say in how it operates.
I have to ask this question at this point in time because everyone in the players union is running around just slandering the WNBA. NECA's slandering them. Nafisa Collier, she's going out her way crazy to slander them. Breonna Stewart is slandering them. And then you gotta understand NECA's a package deal. Don't forget her sister, Chini Agumake. See, a whole bunch of things have to change at this point in time. I'm kind of glad we're here in a sense. But let me get back to my original point before I go there with it. Why is it so hard for Kathy to say Nafisa, Breonna, Kelsey Plum?
Not because Caitlin Clark asked for it, but because the situation practically begs for it. This is where the sarcasm writes itself. The league finally finds a star who transcends the usual limitations, and the response is to slow everything down and argue about structure while the moment quietly slips away. It's like discovering fire and then scheduling a committee meeting to discuss whether warmth aligns with long-term values. Meanwhile, the financial reality keeps knocking louder. Losses don't care about branding exercises. They don't care about internal politics. They don't care about carefully curated messaging. Losses just sit there, accumulating, waiting for someone to either fix the system or admit it needs rebuilding. And that transition usually requires bold decisions, not cautious delays. It requires letting go of the idea that control equals stability and embracing the fact that relevance often demands adaptation. Fans already know this. They're just waiting for the league to catch up. The longer the standoff drags on, the more obvious the imbalance becomes. Caitlin Clark keeps delivering. The league keeps hesitating.
Turning our focus now to the WNBA, the league's collective bargaining agreement expired on Friday night without a new deal. The league and the Players Association have both released statements. Now, the league statement says, in part, as the league experiences a pivotal time of unprecedented popularity and growth, we recognize the importance of building upon that momentum. Our priority is a deal that significantly increases player salaries, enhances the overall player experience, and supports the long-term growth of the league for current and future generations of players and fans.
The commissioner keeps insisting on process while the audience keeps asking for progress. And every delay reinforces the same uncomfortable conclusion. The current leadership model might not be equipped for the era it accidentally stumbled into. That's not an insult, it's an observation. Because leadership is not about maintaining order when nothing changes. Leadership is about steering chaos when everything changes at once. And right now, change is sprinting, while the league is still tying its shoes. This is why the idea of Caitlin Clark as a leadership face refuses to go away. Not because she's demanding power, but because the vacuum is obvious. Fans want someone who represents momentum, clarity, and confidence. Someone who embodies where the league is going, not where it's been stuck. And whether the commissioner likes it or not, that comparison keeps happening. Every sold-out game becomes a reminder. Every spike in ratings becomes a data point. Every stalled negotiation becomes a contrast. The more Caitlin Clark succeeds, the harder it becomes to argue that the old approach just needs more time. At some point, time stops being an excuse and starts being a liability. The irony is that this could have been handled gracefully. Leadership could have leaned into the moment, embraced the star power, and used it as a bridge to real reform. Instead, the league finds itself in a defensive crouch, trying to manage optics while the audience rewrites the narrative anyway. Because fans are not subtle. When they see something working, they want more of it. When they see something failing, they stop pretending otherwise. And right now, the contrast is impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark represents possibility. The current leadership represents hesitation.
Seriously, how hard is it to say that? Nneka Ogwumike, you're going to Project B. You're not even going to be here no more. You're on your last leg. You're not coming back to the WNBA. Why are we negotiating with you? Nafisa Collier, you have unrivaled. You started your own league, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's your priority, cool. Just because you started your league don't mean you get more clout over here with us, though. The girl literally went on camera and said, being a owner of Unrivaled, she knows what it takes to run a sustainable league. And then 2 days later, the ratings came out. Content creators have more people watching them than these Unrivaled.
And here's the part nobody wants to admit. If the league continues losing money, continues stalling growth, and continues fumbling momentum, even with its biggest star carrying the load, change will not be optional. It will be inevitable. Boards will ask questions, sponsors will apply pressure, fans will drift, and suddenly, decisions that once felt radical will feel overdue. At that point, the commissioner may not have a choice, because leadership is not something you cling to, it's something you justify every day. And justification gets harder when the person generating the league's relevance has no real influence over its direction. The longer that disconnect persists, the louder the calls for reshaping the power structure will become. Not out of rebellion, but out of common sense. The league stands at a crossroads it never planned for. One path leads to cautious control, slow negotiation, and the hope that momentum waits patiently. The other leads to embracing the uncomfortable truth that the future already has a face, and it's selling tickets faster than bureaucracy can keep up. Fans already picked their direction. The only question left is how long leadership plans to pretend this is still a debate, because pretending has a shelf life, and in sports, that shelf life is brutally short. Momentum does not politely pause while committees deliberate, and stars do not wait for permission slips to reshape the landscape. They just do it, and everyone else either adapts or gets dragged behind the parade float pretending it was their idea all along.
I want to kind of pin this with just a little background from me, right? And so as a former player, someone who was on the executive committee, went through 2 CBA negotiations, and let me just tell y'all, never want to do that again. A lot going on there, but also as a current investor in the WNBA, these are negotiations. This happens. We read both those statements. It's basically saying we're staying at the table and we're continuing to talk. And that's what you want to see happen.
This is the part where the league has to decide whether it wants to lead the moment or survive it. Because Caitlin Clark is not a temporary spike, not a viral phase, and not a convenient marketing tool to be rotated out once things feel stable again. She is a structural shift, the kind that forces uncomfortable conversations about who actually understands the modern fan, who knows how to sell a product without apologizing for it, and who can turn attention into sustainability instead of excuses. If leadership keeps treating her impact like a happy accident instead of a roadmap, the consequences will not be subtle. Fans will keep asking why the person driving engagement has no seat at the table. Sponsors will start wondering why the league's most valuable asset feels underutilized. And the commissioner will find herself explaining stagnation in an era where stagnation looks a lot like self-sabotage. Eventually, the narrative flips. It stops being about whether Caitlin Clark should have more influence and becomes about why she doesn't already. That is when control quietly changes hands, not through announcements or ceremonies, but through relevance. Because in sports, relevance is leadership, whether the titles acknowledge it or not. And if the league is serious about surviving the next phase, it may have to accept the most uncomfortable truth of all. The future already walked in, sold out the building, and waited patiently. The only thing left is whether anyone in charge is brave enough to hand over the keys before the engine stalls again.